conversation with Lynne Abraham. A couple quick commercials before we actually get started tonight. First of all, if you haven't had a chance, please check out our new channel on Impact.com, which is called Citified. Probably links more frequently, as well as Captain Kirkstrom, who's over there. Just lots of great information about politics, ideas, urban affairs in Philadelphia. So if you have not yet visited Citified, I encourage you to do that. Thank you to our host tonight, Pipeline Philly, great co-working space for a fabulous view of the city and of City Hall right over here. If you have any questions about the space itself, I encourage you to reach out to Greg with the purple sweater. You can see it. I'll tell you more about this. So our format for tonight, Holly will do a Q&A with Lynne for about 45 minutes or so. We'll have some time at the end of that for questions. If you have any questions, we have some cards and pencils there at your seats. Write down a question, and we'll have some folks collect those later on. So, without further ado, please welcome Lynne Abraham and Holly.
Thanks everyone for coming. We really do believe that this is one of the best ways to get to know the mayoral candidates, unlike the forums where you often hear them speaking 1 minute sound bites, no offense, Lynne. Exactly.
Solve the problems in the world in 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Right. So here they're able to talk a little bit more in depth and we're able to ask questions. So really appreciate everyone being here. Thank you, Lynne, for participating. So you were DA for 19 years in the city, and that's the reason I think inarguably that you have the most name recognition going into this mayor's race, and that you were the front runner at the beginning of the race. And yet we haven't heard you talk too much about what it was like to be DA, sort of in the day-to-day experience. I was wondering if you could tell us how you saw the worst of the city, every day, and are able to maintain any sense of optimism about Philadelphia.
It's interesting you asked me that because not once during this entire campaign has anybody asked anything about the district attorney's office. Let me say that it was, for Philadelphia, it was probably one of the low points in our history, because with the introduction of a tremendous amount of gang warfare related to drug abuse, it was a very, very difficult time. The homicide rate, starting when I think Ed Randell and Ron Castillo were in office, started to gradually inch up, and it got to be really very bad during the late 80s and into the 90s. Our homicide rate was still very high. It wasn't as high as at its highest point, which was, I think, during, I forgot whether it's Ed or Ron, it was over 500, but it was very, very high. It wasn't possible for anybody to sit on his or her front step. It wasn't possible for children to play on the streets. Every mother was worried for herself and for her child or children. Gun violence was epidemic. I remember several cases, one involving a young boy named Fahim Thomas Childs, who was on his way to school one morning at 8:15 with his mother holding his hand, and a gang war broke out between two warring elements from across the street, and young Fahim got caught in the crossfire, shot in the head, and his parents were hoping that he would survive, but it became clear that he could. So his mother very bravely donated his organs to help other children live. It was so the point was that it's a time of nobility and a time of tremendous sadness. And I went to a lot of funerals and spoke to a lot of people, went around to every community, spoke to thousands of people about their situation. And what they were looking for, and the district attorney was someone who would be their champion. Someone who, with her office of over 300 prosecutors, would try to bring them a sense of justice. Some horrible wrongs had been committed against everybody. And they wanted a measure of satisfaction that the courts would be open to them. So the interesting thing for me was that, except for the turf battles involving the warring factions over territory or drugs or something similar, people wanted to have access to the court, and they wanted a warrior to fight for the vindication of their rights and their children's lives. And I thought that was probably one of the most noble things that people wanted. They wanted their voices to be heard. That's the role that I and my office played for them.
That was a pretty dark time in the city, like you said. Nowadays, the homicide rate has dropped to a modern low under Mayor Michael Nutter. We've seen our population increase for the first time in a half century. Do you believe that the city is on the upswing, or does it still face huge challenges? What's your view of the city right now?
Well, let me just speak about crime. I think the number 2 issue of this city, which almost no one has asked us about during this election campaign, is crime and safety. We talked a lot about the issues of police-community relations, which we should be talking about. But never once has the issue of crime and safety come up during this campaign. I've been absolutely astounded. Women and children still feel unsafe. People's homes are burglarized. They've been mugged on the streets. People walking their dogs have been killed. And I'm happy that the crime rate has gone down and our homicide rate has gone down. But because it's gone down doesn't mean the city is safe. People feel uniquely unsafe in a major American city. So I salute Commissioner Ramsey, and I think he's done a fabulous job with his limited resources in bringing the crime rate down, but it's still unacceptably high. With regard to the city, I believe that for me, I think the city, from my point of view, I'm totally optimistic about the city. I have great faith in the city. I absolutely am a cheerleader for the city. I think the city's best days are ahead of it. I've said on many occasions during my campaign that I want to be the leader who makes Philadelphia the next great American city. I believe we can get there, but we have intractable problems that is frustrating because they haven't been appropriately addressed or fully addressed, and they still remain unsolved.
Let's talk a little bit about your record as DA. In the 1990s, the New York Times wrote an article in which they called you the deadliest DA because you were seeking the death penalty more often than any other prosecutor in the country. Since then, has your view on the death penalty changed at all? And I've seen you be asked this before, and you sort of brushed it off and said that the mayor doesn't, have a role in the death penalty. They can't seek the death penalty. But I mean, I think it indicates, your views on criminal justice and speaks to questions I think people have about whether you can be a modern mayor. So can you tell us here whether or not your view has changed at all on the death penalty?
Well, first of all, I really don't. I don't think I was the deadliest DA. I think that in reviewing all the cases that we did, remember I said to you in an opening statement or close to it, that our homicide rate was unbelievably high, with people being killed, including people who were made to lay on the floor and executed. 7 of them executed over what? They were executed over a car that was sold with a faulty transmission to a man who wanted to give the car back, and the people who sold it to him wouldn't take it back. It was a very low price, a couple $100. So he lined up everybody in the circle on the floor and shot them all in the back of the head. And the only reason it wasn't 10 people was that the 3 other victims survived over a car. So in those cases where police officers, remember about 13 police officers were killed in the line of duty while I was district attorney. I can name several if you want me to, but that was the case. And the law permits the district attorney of the city of Philadelphia to ask for or seek the death penalty in appropriate cases with 10 considerations that may qualify. And I always believe that the most important judgment on punishment, whether a person shall live or shall not, should be left up to our jury system. I never, as the prosecutor, ever had, to my knowledge, any case where we didn't leave that up to the jury. And I think it's the sense of the community. The community is the best person to decide, as sitting in judgment of a member of their own community, or sitting in judgment of one of our own, whether or not the death penalty is appropriate. And whatever their jury's decision was, I respected it, no matter what their decision. And even if they couldn't make a decision, in which case the penalty is life, I think that is a totally appropriate way. I have no objections. I said this 100 times while I was DA. If the United States Supreme Court or our Commonwealth abolishes the death penalty, I'm fine with that. Absolutely fine. Have no problem with it at all. But as long as we and the state have the death penalty, I think a prosecutor should be permitted to seek the death penalty. As a matter of fact, the present district attorney is objecting to the governor's decision, Governor Wolf, and he's going to declare a moratorium on the death penalty. I don't object to it. I think that the governor has the right to be thoughtful about that decision, because I can tell you it's a weighty decision, a very weighty decision. Not to be, it's not something that one does sort of, while you're driving down the highway. This is really tough stuff, and you can see the transformation of jurors. I've sat as a judge, I've been a prosecutor, I've been a judge, and I've been the prosecutor. I can tell you, there's almost a mystical transformation of people when they serve on the jury. They change. They come in with sort of a mindset. You try to question them carefully during the what's called the voir dire, but then when they have to actually sit in judgment, they visualize a person as a concept. But then there he is, or there she is, and he looks no different, or she, than anybody else. Then it hits them. Holy smokes! I'm sitting in judgment of another human being. It becomes really, really tough, and jurors cry over it, men and women, in trying to reach the correct decision. That's why I wanted to leave that decision always up to the community, for them to decide whether they thought, in their mind, under the law and the facts of this case, weighing aggravating and mitigating circumstances, this person should live or should not. That's the way I thought it should go.
But if you could do it all over again, you would do it the same. You would seek death penalty just for
I didn't say that. I'm not doing it again. I've been there and did that. I'm looking to be mayor. And that's where I'm looking. I'm looking forward, thinking only, but my past is my past. I don't shrink from it.
You don't regret it.
I didn't say that. Now you're trying to put words.
Did you or did you not?
Well,
I
did.
Differently or not?
What I did was here's what I did. I put my hand on the Bible. I swore to support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of Pennsylvania, and the Home Rule Charter. And I do not apologize for following the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Pennsylvania, and the laws of this Commonwealth and the City Charter. I perform my duties fully and well, and the citizens, I think, thought that I was their champion and re-elected me on 5 occasions. I think that's a pretty good measure of what the community thought of my value and my ethics and my morals and my integrity.
Okay, let's move on to another topic. I wrote an article recently about how you decided to not prosecute a police sergeant who in 2008 shot a 20-year-old in the back. The young man, his name is Lawrence Allen, he was paralyzed and died a few months later. When Seth Williams succeeded you as district attorney, he reopened the case. Both Sergeant Ellison and his then girlfriend, who was involved in the dispute, also a police officer, were charged and eventually convicted of reckless endangerment. You told me the other week that you would have done things differently. You would have charged them with reckless endangerment, and you said the reason is, quote, given the circumstances that we know now and the evidence that we have now about the temper of the community, if you will, that was why you would do it differently. Does this suggest that some of your decisions are based more on PR than on whether an actual crime was committed?
Listen, remember I just said I'm going to put my hand on that Bible when I was sworn in, and I'm an honest public servant. I said I would support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and Pennsylvania, and all the laws in the Home Rule Charter. So, in the Ellison case, the officer's name and his girlfriend, who was also a police officer, just for the people here, Ellison's son came home and reported that he was robbed of a pizza at 19th and Cheltenham Avenue, some close to it in the West Oak Lane section. And he identified the person he thought who had robbed him. And I don't want to give his name because I work here, and I don't want to give anybody's name who is an accused in a public face. Ellison, as a police officer, should have picked up the phone and called the police, but instead of which he used self-help. Never a good judgment call. So he and his girlfriend and the son got in the car and they started to look for the perpetrator. They got to a certain block in West Oak Lane, and then a big neighborhood thing happened. And it's all in the testimony and the evidence of my investigation, which was almost identical to the one conducted by Seth Williams. On the basis of our evidence and his evidence, it was clear from witnesses who had nothing to do with this case, they weren't on one side or the other, that Ellison shouldn't have been there, but that when he confronted Mr. Allen pulled out a gun, and a fight erupted over the gun. Ellison drew his weapon and fired. Then he jumped in the car, had some words with the alleged robber who was urging everybody to go in the house and get their stuff, meaning weapons, and he took off with his lady friend and left the scene. By the time the police arrived, there was no gun found on Mr. Allen, but the police hadn't arrived for many minutes. I can't remember right now the amount of time it was. So the testimony, however, the evidence was not only from the eyewitnesses, but in Mr. Allen's pants was residue from guns, and therefore the evidence was clear to us that Allen was armed, and although Chauncey Ellison was wrong, that we should not prosecute him for manslaughter. And at that point, we thought that if we couldn't prosecute him for manslaughter, that a lesser offense would not have obtained as well. So Mr. Williams thought differently, which is his right. I don't quarrel with another set of eyes looking at the case. He charged Ellison through an investigation with manslaughter, which we declined, and reckless endangerment. The jury did not convict on manslaughter. They convicted on a lesser included offense. We recommend that Ellison and his girlfriend be fired, and they were unfit to be police officers. And I wrote a letter to that effect, which I think I told you on the phone about. To the police commissioner. Beg pardon?
I wrote about that.
Yeah, sure. I'm not accusing you didn't write about it. No. This is not accusatory. This is informational. So we recommend that they be fired. Mr. Williams saw things differently. In thinking about how things have changed between then and now, vis-a-vis the community and the police, it might have been a wiser course to charge with reckless endangerment. But on the balance of the evidence I had at that time and the way things broke, I thought it was appropriate at that time to fire Mr. Ellison and his lady friend from the police department. They were unfit. The police department didn't do that, by the way, for some period of time, which was very dismaying to me. But given the way things have happened with police-community relations, that informs one of a change in perception in the community about the police-community relations. That's the only thing. I don't do anything for publicity. I don't count convictions and acquittals.
What has changed other than the public opinion?
Well, I think what's happened is the way police and the community have reacted to each other. And I believe that may have played a role in my thinking had I thought about it that way then. I didn't, and I stand on my decision. That was the decision I made, for good or ill. I leave that up to the public to decide whether I was right or wrong. I thought I was doing the best possible job I could on the evidence, that Mr. Allen was armed and dangerous, Mr. Ellison was armed and wrong, and that on balance, there shouldn't be charges. I accept the fact that someone thought differently, and the jury convicted of reckless endangerment. I accept it.
And just as a point of clarification, I mean, as you noted, there was not a gun found in Allen's body, but there also wasn't one found in his house, and witnesses both said that he had a gun, and other witnesses said that he didn't.
Well, okay. As I said, the jury did not convict Mr. Ellison of manslaughter in this jury trial. They did not convict him. So, well, okay. So that means that they had doubt about the credibility of he wasn't armed. That's their decision. I still support whatever the jury decides, whether they are, whatever they decide. I leave everything to the power of the jury. They're the voice of the community. I respect their decision, whatever it is.
Okay, so today, what's the best way to address the distrust that is in some communities of police?
Well, first of all, I have to say, remember that police officers are over 6,000 strong. It used to be 7,000 strong. And police are the people one calls whenever any of these people in this room or besides, any place outside of this room, you get in trouble, you want a police officer. And police officers respond, and they do put their lives on the line every single day. And I respect police, and I want the city to be safe and secure. And as the next mayor, I will make sure that the crime rate is addressed by an appropriate police commissioner and all the checks and balances. But amount of marijuana. It became apparent to me in looking at the whole way that marijuana has become a whole issue in this country, that there's a change in opinion about marijuana. And I don't believe in looking in a rearview mirror. I believe in always looking forward. That's why I look out my windshield of my car. I'm going forward. I'm not going backward. That's the only way you make progress. So what I said is I still oppose small amounts of marijuana being in possession possessed by juveniles and adolescents because of the things that I've said. For medical marijuana, totally supported if it's prescribed by a physician. And whether it works or doesn't work, we'll find out later as medical science evolves. But if you have a practitioner who provides a script for you, no matter what the circumstances, adult or child, I'm fine with that as well. For adults smoking marijuana in their own home, that's something that's private and never got involved in it.
But I mean, what's changed your mind? I have not heard you actually answer the
Well,
question. I've heard you many
I
times.
just said that. I just said that. I said the whole idea of marijuana, the growing of marijuana, the taxation of marijuana, the business of marijuana has changed a lot of people's opinion about it.
But why has it changed your opinion?
For the same reason to change everybody else's opinion.
Which is what?
Because it's now an acceptable way of using these substances that people find that they want to use them at their own discretion without fearing criminal conduct. So I support that because I think, first of all, it takes police off the streets too much. It really spends a lot of time doing paperwork. I also don't agree, totally disagree with